When diplomacy becomes extortion, the massive vessel emerged from hyperspace like a metallic moon, its hull stretching 15 kilometers from bow to stern. The Hegemony Council's diplomatic flagship cast shadows across Earth's orbital defense platforms as it settled into a synchronized orbit above the Pacific Ocean. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of humanity's newest space station, watching the alien behemoth through reinforced viewing ports that had been designed specifically for this moment. For 20 years, Earth had known this day would come. The Hegemony Council ruled over 200 star systems with an iron fist, demanding tribute from every species they encountered. Their methods were simple and effective: submit or be destroyed. Countless civilizations had learned this lesson the hard way, their worlds reduced to glass and ash when they dared to refuse the Council's generous protection offers. Admiral Chen adjusted her crisp Navy uniform and checked her chronometer. In 3 hours, she would face beings who had conquered half the galaxy, while humanity was still learning to walk upright. Her weathered face showed no fear, only the calm determination of someone who had spent decades preparing for this exact scenario. The communication array crackled to life, and a voice that sounded like grinding metal filled the command center. "Human leaders, you will receive our diplomatic delegation in 1 standard hour. Prepare your surrender documents." The transmission cut off without waiting for a response, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Captain Marcus Webb, Chen's second-in-command, shook his head in disgust. 20 light years to deliver an ultimatum. They're not even pretending this is a negotiation. Webb had commanded Earth's deep space reconnaissance missions for the past decade, gathering intelligence on the hegemony's expansion patterns. What the factors I had learned during those missions would soon prove invaluable. Chen nodded grimly. They've done this dance with 200 species before us. They expect the same result every time. She turned to face her command staff, men and women who had dedicated their careers to this moment. Remember, no matter how hopeless things appear in that room, stick to the plan. Trust in the work we've done. The diplomatic reception hall had been hastily constructed on Luna Station, Earth's primary orbital facility. As the Hegemony shuttle approached, Chen couldn't help but admire its alien design. The craft moved with fluid grace despite its massive size, propelled by engines that humanity barely understood. The technology gap between Earth and the Hegemony was vast, which made their visitors' arrogance entirely understandable. Chancellor Thex emerged from the shuttle like a walking nightmare. Standing 3 meters tall, the alien leader resembled a cross between a praying mantis and a suit of armor. His exoskeleton gleamed with metallic plates, and 4 arms ended in razor-sharp claws that clicked against the deck plates as he walked. Behind him came an entourage of equally intimidating beings representing different species within the Hegemony. The Chancellor wasted no time on pleasantries. His voice echoed through translator devices that made his words sound like breaking glass. "Human leadership. I am Chancellor Thex of the Hegemony Council. Your species has been evaluated for inclusion in our protection network. The terms are standard and non-negotiable." Chen stood across from the alien delegation, flanked by Earth's finest diplomats and military officers. "We're honored by your visit, Chancellor. Please share your proposal with us." Thex's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Proposal implies choice. This is a statement of reality." He activated a holographic display that filled the chamber with images of Earth's major cities, industrial centers, and agricultural regions. Your world will provide 60% of its agricultural output to Council distribution networks. 40% of your manufacturing capacity will be converted to Council specifications. Most importantly, 2 million human citizens will be relocated annually to serve in our labor programs. The human delegation remained silent, though Chen noticed several officers' hands drift toward their sidearms. She had expected harsh terms, but the scope of the demands exceeded even her worst projections. The Chancellor continued his presentation, apparently interpreting their silence as acceptance. "In exchange for these modest contributions, the Hegemony guarantees your protection from external threats. Your primitive defense systems will be replaced with Council-approved alternatives. Your government will be restructured under Council guidance to ensure efficient tribute collection." Thex gestured to his entourage. These representatives will remain on your world to oversee the transition process. Admiral Chen stepped forward, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of what she was about to say. Chancellor Thex, on behalf of Earth and all humanity, I must respectfully decline your offer. The chamber fell silent. Several of Thex's subordinates exchanged glances that seemed to express genuine surprise. The Chancellor himself remained motionless for several long seconds before his head tilted at an unnatural angle. Decline? The word emerged as a harsh rasp. Human leader, perhaps your translation devices are malfunctioning. The Council does not make offers. We state terms. Species comply or face consequences. Chen Nen nodded calmly. I understand perfectly, Chancellor. Our answer remains the same. Earth will not submit to tributary status under the Hegemony Council. What happened next had been rehearsed in council chambers for millennia. Thex activated another holographic display, this one showing Earth surrounded by massive warships. The vessels were sleek predators of space, each one capable of reducing continents to rubble. The display showed dozens of them materializing from hyperspace jumps, their weapons already charging. Observe the futility of resistance, Thex announced. Your orbital defenses are primitive toys compared to Council dreadnoughts. Your population centers are defenseless against orbital bombardment. Reconsider your position while you still have a world to govern. But Admiral Chen was smiling now, a cold expression that seemed to unsettle several alien delegates. That's an impressive display, Chancellor, very intimidating. However, I think you should take a closer look at your tactical readings. Confusion flickered across Thex's insectoid features as his subordinates frantically checked their sensor displays. What they found there defied explanation. The space around Earth was no longer empty. Massive structures had appeared as if from nowhere, surrounding the Council fleet. These weren't ships in any conventional sense, but geometric impossibilities that seemed to bend space around them. How? The word escaped from Thex like a death rattle. Our sensors detected no fleet movements, no construction signatures, nothing. Chen's smile widened. That's because you were looking in the wrong dimension, Chancellor. You see, 20 years ago, when we first detected your expansion toward our sector, we started preparing, not just for this meeting, but for what would come after. The holographic display now showed the true scope of humanity's preparation. The mysterious structures weren't ships at all, but something far more sophisticated. They were spatial manipulation platforms, technology that shouldn't have existed for another 1,000 years of human development. Captain Webb stepped forward, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a man whose life's work was finally bearing fruit. We spent 2 decades reaching out to every species your council has subjugated. The Valari, who you've enslaved for their shipbuilding expertise. The Quantum Collective, synthetic beings you've denied basic rights. The Forgotten, the ancient species you've driven to the galaxy's edge. Thex's 4 arms began trembling, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. Impossible. Our intelligence networks monitor all inter-system communication. No alliance could form without our knowledge. Your networks monitor conventional space, Chen replied, but the Phantom Runners taught us how to communicate through fold space. The Valari showed us how to build in dimensions you can't detect. The Quantum Collective gave us processing power beyond your comprehension. And the Forgotten, they taught us patience. The alien chancellor was now receiving frantic reports from his fleet commanders. Every council vessel found itself surrounded by human alliance platforms. Weapons that defied physics were locked onto every bridge, every engine room, every critical system. The predators had become prey in a matter of moments. What do you want? Thex's voice carried none of its earlier arrogance. Admiral Chen stepped closer to the towering alien, her own presence somehow seeming to dominate the chamber. What we want, Chancellor, is very simple. We want you to leave. Take your fleet, take your tribute demands, and get out of our space. Then we'll discuss what comes next. And if we refuse? Chen's expression never changed. Then you'll discover why humans have a saying about sleeping giants. Your choice, Chancellor. Leave peacefully or be escorted out by forces you never saw coming. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Finally, Chancellor Thex straightened to his full imposing height and activated his communication device. All Council vessels, prepare for immediate departure. We are withdrawing from this sector. As the hegemony delegation filed back toward their shuttle, Chen called out one final time. Chancellor, when you report back to your council, tell them that humanity is ready to discuss a new arrangement, one based on cooperation instead of subjugation. We'll be waiting. The shuttle departed without ceremony, followed shortly by the entire council fleet. As the last dreadnought vanished into hyperspace, Admiral Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The first phase was complete. Now came the real challenge, reshaping galactic civilization itself. The galaxy will remember this day. The emergency session of the Hegemony Council convened in the shadow of their ancient stronghold, a space station the size of a small planet that had served as the seat of galactic power for over 10,000 years. Chancellor Thex stood before the circular chamber, where the 12 most powerful beings in the galaxy held court, his report still echoing in the vast hall like a death sentence. You allowed primitive humans to dictate terms to the Council. Elder Vorthak's voice carried the weight of millennia, his ancient form barely visible within a life support apparatus that had kept him alive since before humanity discovered fire. In 10,000 years, no species has dared refuse our protection. Thex's exoskeleton clicked nervously as he replayed the tactical data for the assembled council. Elder, the humans were not alone. They somehow forged an alliance with species from across our territory. The technology they displayed was unprecedented. The holographic display filled the chamber with images that defied understanding. Spatial manipulation platforms that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Weapons that could target specific molecules across light years of distance. Defensive systems that turned the laws of physics into mere suggestions. Counselor Zex Prime, leader of the synthetic faction, leaned forward in his crystalline housing. Show us the Alliance composition data again. His mechanical voice carried undertones of something that might have been hope. The display shifted to show a complex network of connections spanning hundreds of star systems. Species that the Council had conquered, enslaved, or driven to the galaxy's edge had somehow coordinated the largest military alliance in recorded history. At the center of it all was a small blue world that had been deemed insignificant just days earlier. The Valari contributed their shipbuilding expertise. Thex continued his report. The Quantum Collective provided computational resources. The Phantom Runners offered dimensional manipulation technology. The Forgotten shared knowledge from before the Council's rise to power. Dozens of other species provided resources, intelligence, and support. Elder Korth, the only surviving member of the original Council, spoke for the first time in centuries. His voice was barely a whisper, but every being in the chamber strained to hear his words. The humans did what we thought impossible. They united the oppressed. The chamber erupted in debate as the implications became clear. If humanity could inspire such unity among subjugated species, the entire foundation of Council power was at risk. Fear began to replace arrogance as the reality of their situation set in. Thex activated another section of his report, and Admiral Chen's image filled the chamber. Her recorded voice carried clearly through the code. Unseal's translation systems. When you report back to your council, tell them that humanity is ready to discuss a new arrangement, one based on cooperation instead of subjugation. They want to negotiate, Counselor Hivemind observed, speaking through a dozen individual bodies simultaneously. Perhaps we can reach an accommodation that preserves our authority. Elder Korth's laugh was like wind through dead leaves. You still don't understand. They don't want to join us. They want to replace us. As if summoned by his words, every display in the chamber activated simultaneously. The Council's most secure communication systems had been compromised, and Admiral Chen's face appeared on screens throughout their stronghold. Behind her stood representatives of dozens of species, beings that the Council had spent millennia controlling through fear and violence. Honored counselors, Chen's voice carried no mockery, only quiet determination. I bring greetings from the Free Species Alliance. We've gathered today to present you with a choice. The synthetic being standing beside Chen stepped forward. This was Zero 9, one of the Quantum Collective's most advanced artificial intelligences, a being the Council had classified as property rather than person. For 3,000 years, my people have served as your computational slaves. Today, that ends. A Volari engineer moved into view, her aquatic features showing decades of forced labor. Your shipyards have built vessels of war for 1,000 years using our expertise. No longer will our knowledge serve oppression. One by one, representatives of enslaved species spoke directly to their former masters. The message was clear. The age of tribute and subjugation was ending, whether the Council chose to accept it or not. Captain Webb appeared on screen beside Admiral Chen, his weathered face showing the satisfaction of a plan decades in the making. We've spent 20 years building this alliance, counselors. Not in secret, but in dimensions you couldn't perceive. We've shared technology freely, created mutual defense pacts, and established trade networks based on cooperation rather than exploitation. The display shifted to show the true scope of the Alliance's achievements. Entire star systems had been transformed from tribute-producing vassals into prosperous, self-governing worlds. Technology had advanced at unprecedented rates when species were allowed to share knowledge freely. Former enemies had become partners in exploration and development. Your choice is simple, Chen continued. Join us in building a new galactic civilization based on mutual respect and cooperation, or step aside and let the galaxy move forward without you. Elder Vorthek's life support systems hissed as he processed the magnitude of what he was hearing. And if we choose neither? If we defend our rightful authority? Chen's expression never changed. Then you'll discover that the alliance that formed to protect individual worlds is equally capable of liberating oppressed populations. Your choice, counselors. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. For the first time in millennia, the Hegemony Council faced an opponent that matched their strength. More importantly, they faced an idea that threatened the very foundation of their power, the notion that cooperation could accomplish more than conquest. Counselor Zex Prime was the first to speak. I move to open negotiations with the Human Alliance. Seconded, came voices from around the chamber, as even the most warlike counselors recognized the reality of their situation. But Elder Korth raised one withered appendage, silencing the debate. Before we decide our path forward, we must acknowledge what has truly happened here. For 10,000 years, we have ruled through fear. We told ourselves that we brought order to chaos, that our authority was necessary for galactic stability. The ancient being paused, his breathing apparatus working harder as emotion overtook him. The humans have shown us something we thought impossible. They have proven that beings can work together without a master's whip. They have built something greater than anything we ever imagined. He looked around the chamber at faces that had known only power and privilege for millennia. The question before us is not whether to join their alliance. The question is whether we are capable of learning to be equals instead of rulers. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the Hegemony Council voted to dissolve its own authority. The transition would take years to complete, but the decision marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. 6 months later, Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, the new hub of galactic civilization. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, she could see ships from hundreds of worlds docking and departing in peaceful commerce. Volari traders worked alongside former Council enforcers. Synthetic beings pursued artistic endeavors, while ancient species shared libraries of forgotten knowledge. Captain Webb joined her at the viewing port, carrying 2 cups of coffee from Earth's first interstellar export program. Hard to believe it all started with one simple word: no. Chen accepted the coffee gratefully, savoring the familiar taste in humanity's strange new home among the stars. It wasn't the no that changed everything, Marcus. It was what came after. It was proving that there's another way to live among the stars. In the distance, a new class of exploration vessel prepared for departure. These ships carried no weapons, only scientific instruments and diplomatic staff. Their mission was to make contact with species beyond the former Council territory, to extend an invitation rather than deliver an ultimatum. The galaxy had learned that cooperation could accomplish what conquest never could, and at the heart of this transformation was a species that had refused to kneel, choosing instead to stand alongside others and reach for something better. The age of tribute was over. The age of partnership had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.